In this video, I want to talk about what it takes to build a team where everybody is so confident in their position that they are contributing in building the systems that could potentially lead to them losing their jobs. Metaphorically, we want to position each person in a team not as a cog in the machine, but as the force that holds the machine together. And if we manage to build trust and the processes that we work with to such a point where everybody trusts that they will be treated as the force and not the cog that could be replaced, they'll help you build that system. Meaning the individual person's process of self-actualization is aligned with the business goals as well. When that is happening, we can all be aligned with this goal of just trying to remove as many of the repetitive tasks as possible. This video is part of a series on building systems in organizations. The first video, I talked about what aspects of the work to systematize. And in the second video, I talked about an important element of trust building. And here I'm going to continue on that element of trust building from a new perspective, but I've also linked to the other videos in the description. For this video, I'm drawing on 15 years of experience building a teaching and an event organization. And I'll tell you more about my background, but I'll do it at the back end of the video. Here, I want to just jump into the idea to share with you, especially how we can create an environment where personal self-actualization can be fulfilled within a heterogeneous group of adults. And I'm curious to see if my non-standard experience can bring you new insights that you can work with. The idea starts with understanding how we grow from a well-designed challenge. And for the sake of this video, I'm just making the assumption that the process of self-actualization is synonymous with growth. And the way we grow is that we absorb negative emotional energy, and through the process of solving it, we convert it into positive emotional energy that ultimately manifests itself as higher level of well-being, confidence, and skill. The negative emotional energy come in the form of stress. Now, stress can be something designed, purposeful that you do to yourself, or stress can just come randomly through an accident or a conflict or any other undesired event. For each individual, there's a sweet spot between comfort and frustration. And that sweet spot is the exact amount of stress we want to expose ourselves to in order to have a nice experience while we grow from the challenge. If we have too little of the challenge, growth is just too slow. If it's too high and we're in the frustration zone for too long, the negative consequences on other aspects of our health is just potentially too costly. One of the aspects that makes you hit the right spot is that you have chosen to take on that challenge. And even though you oscillate in this moment and sometimes it's too high and sometimes it's too low, as long as you've chosen to take on the challenge, you will grow from it. That sweet spot I was talking about is commonly referred to as the flow zone or just flow. And you typically recognize if you're in flow by the sense of losing time while being in deep concentration. And the way I see it is that flow just helps you endure the tension for a lot longer. So that gives you more time under tension, which means more time to learn, more time to try to tackle the challenge, and give it more time to turn this into your new comfort zone. And that means if this is the new comfort zone, you need a new set of challenge in order to grow again. And this process is, for me, one of the main aspects of self-actualization, because you grow towards the thing you want to turn into. The bet I made that I think helped me accelerate my career as an educator is that I believe that people want flow much more than they want fun. But because they don't know how to get into flow, they think they seek fun. And I could be the vehicle that helped them find flow for themselves for much longer. And because they could experience that, they showed me immense amount of dedication and long-term commitment. And I saw this both in my customer base, but also within my team, as well as for, of course, my own personal self-development. Within the context of an organization, you want to set it up in such a way that people can spend as much time in their flow zone as possible. That means that we need to make sure people can opt in into the challenges and opt into how much of the challenges they want to have to be able to calibrate the flow zone. And once they've grown from that and converted that into their comfort zone, be able to go on and take on the new sets of challenges. And this is why we continuously need to build those systems that frees us up from repetitive tasks, because those repetitive tasks anchors us into the comfort zone and don't leave a lot of space for growth zone activity, which means it holds us back from the process of self-actualization. But we do sort of have a paradox here, because if a person turns around and free themselves up from their repetitive task by automate it or teach others to take over that work, the risk that they lose their job is high, because the organization sort of don't need them anymore, right? And this is where we need to switch perspective from cogs in the machine versus the force that holds them together. As an organization, we need to repetitively demonstrate that people are better off when they go through that process of freeing themselves up from repetitive tasks than when they don't. Now, if we really want this to work and the process of self-actualization really flourish for everybody in the organization, we need to take on commitments and responsibilities at 3 levels at the same time: the individual, the team, and the organization as a whole. Let's break down what we need to do at each of those levels. We're going to start with the individual level. If I were to break down the 2 factors that had the biggest impact on our ability to commit to growth on an individual level, it would be the first one would be self-regulation, and the second one would be our ability to control our trigger responses. The first part, your self-regulation, is about your biology. It's about your ability to keep your dopamine and serotonin levels normalized or in a healthy range. Because dopamine is about your sense of motivation, your ability to pursue a goal, and serotonin is about reducing your anxiety and your ability to stay with a challenge for a lot longer. And both these neurotransmitters are deeply affected by how you sleep, how you eat, how you train, your sunlight exposure, and not only that, but also how you go about your recreational activities. Point 2, your ability to handle your responses to triggers is a mental strength thingy. It's about your ability to extending the gap between stimulus and response so you can better exercise your ideals. We all know this feeling where somebody says something and we responded faster than we wanted. We didn't give ourselves time to think about how we want to say it and what we really want to say, and we damage our relationship, we damage our own ability to match up with our ideals. And the ability to extend this gap between stimulus and response comes from mindfulness trainings, come from understanding more about yourself. And these two combined, your regulatory processes as well as your ability to control your reactions to triggers, are crucial parts of allowing yourself to continuously stay on your process of self-actualization. But I think it's pretty clear why I believe these 2 aspects fall squarely within your domain of responsibility as an individual, rather than something that your organization should take responsibility for. How you handle your sleep, nutrition, training, sun exposure, recreational activities are such a deeply personal matters that I know it, at least for me, if my organization would try to encroach on this area and influence that too much, I would say they would be overstepping, right? But at the same time, if you come to work and your dopamine and serotonin levels are all whacked and your gap between stimulus and response is non-existent and you cannot stay true to your ideals or the commitments you made about how you want to behave at work, then it's just going to be harder for the organization to integrate you into their ambitions, right? So as an organization, we could maybe support individuals by offering trainings and workshops or buying the books that contains this information, and you can choose to opt into taking these trainings so that you implement the learnings. I mean, that implementation must be on your own responsibility again. And without you taking on this responsibility, a major component of creating an environment where you have a chance for your process of self-actualization just disappears. So we need to do that. If you want to discuss this topic, I've been studying this area extensively, both from the perspective of self-regulational activities, but also the process of extending the space between trigger and response. Just comment in the comment section or write me a personal message. The next level is a team level responsibility. And one of the important insights I had over the years of teaching and building communities is that if we need a homogeneous group of people in order to make progress, we inevitably start fragmenting our community, meaning we will keep splitting people into smaller and smaller groups of people who are at the same level in order to make progress at the right tempo. The big issue I have with this is that this sort of fragmentation leads to second-class citizenship, and that is counterproductive for creating an environment where individual self-actualization is supposed to happen. And when we manage to rethink how we group people together, and importantly, build the necessary skills needed to handle that heterogeneity, we manage to move a heterogeneous group of people forward homogeneously. And this heterogeneity come in different forms. Some are by design, some are unwanted, and some just come because of the nature of our turbulent work life. And having the skill to be able to distinguish between these different forms and be able to parse them apart is an important quality to have when we're working together as a team. So the wanted form of heterogeneity comes from people collaborating together who have different sets of skills and backgrounds. And together they cover a much broader spectrum of knowledge that can help moving a project forward. Between my co-founder and me, I have much more experience with business, our market, and sales, while my partner has deep technical knowledge. And this even influences how we think. But when we have discussions, I prefer to draw up the user interface and discuss from that perspective, where my co-founder prefers to draw up the database schema and discuss from that perspective. And this is wanted heterogeneity. But if we don't have the interpersonal skills needed to be able to handle the friction that happens in these conversations, we're gonna bump heads quite a lot. And with the right set of skills, we can eliminate this interpersonal friction and just benefit from all the valuable aspects of this form of collaborations. When I talk about unwanted form of heterogeneity, what I mean is that when people have different sets of goals, meaning their vectors are moving in opposite directions, one person's work cancels out the other person's work, and progress becomes close to impossible in this scenario. And I believe the CEO's most important job is to make sure all vectors are aligned in the same direction. But the immediate team is closest to the individual person's vectors, and it's important that we all develop the necessary skills needed to handle the interpersonal friction or challenges that by default comes up when we are having these sort of form of conversations. The unexpected form of heterogeneity comes from when a person might not be able to show up the same way they did previously. And this can come from a positive side, a child has blessed a family, to a negative side where the car broke down, somebody got sick, and so on. And I believe a strong team is one that is able to buffer this form of heterogeneity. They do this by frequently checking in with each other with questions like, how is your workload? Do you need help with anything? Should we shuffle any task around? Would you need me to cover for you? Let me double click on this. I was mentioning earlier that a person finds flow right in that intersection between comfort and frustration. And where this flow sits can be different at different times, different type of challenges for each person, right? So it's not a consistent element, and the immediate team can support each other when we drift to staying in comfort zone for too long, or when the tasks are getting too challenging and we find ourselves in the frustration zone for too long. And by being able to have such conversations with each other, we can support each other to spend more time in the flow zone. But we need a certain skills to handle such questions without adding too much interpersonal friction while checking in on each other's flow states. I would bundle the skills needed here under the umbrella of nonviolent communications. This is an umbrella term that I'm using for many sub-skills, such as active listening, your ability to handle conflict conversations, your ability to hold the other person's humanity in mind even under tension. And I truly believe this is a superpower that anybody can possess, but unfortunately too few people do. And I'm very passionate about it, and I want to make sure that everybody in our organization has the necessary skills to handle it, because I believe if an organization follows this concept where everything is geared towards people spending more time in flow, and as they achieve that challenge are available to take on the next level challenge, rapid growth of an organization happens in an enjoyable and productive way without needing abuse from the top, meaning we shouldn't need a tyrannic CEO in order to make rapid progress as it sometimes seems like. So the challenge we face is that because the immediate team spend time with each other on a daily basis, there's a lot of value put on harmony. But without the necessary nonviolent communication skills, this harmony rapidly converts into interpersonal politics. So, how exactly do we do this work? Well, one of the important aspects is that your systems should then remove the need for conversations to happen. And this allows us to regularly check in with each other using the questions I was mentioning earlier, where you check in with a person's workflow and their level of tension right now. Are they in their frustration zone? Are they in their comfort zone? And if everybody has the skills needed to handle these conversations, and it's not just something that comes from the leader, but we can all support each other in finding our individual flow zone, meaning support each other when we spend too much time in our comfort zone and support each other when we spend too much time in our frustration zone. Now, let's talk about the organizational level responsibility. From the lens of creating an environment that is conducive to self-actualization, I believe the organization needs to commit itself to the following concept. Are people able to opt in and buy into the work that is given to them? Have you ever heard this joke where one spouse turns to the other one and says, "Why don't you ever tell me you love me anymore?" And the spouse answers, "Well, I did tell you once I love you when we got married, and if anything changes, I'll let you know." Now, anybody who's been in a long-term relationship knows why that's funny. Now, the point I'm making with this joke is something that I've learned as a teacher. When adults come to me, even if they pay me good money, I know better than assume that they will just listen to everything I'm saying and follow my instructions according to what I think is best for them at that moment. Instead, what I do is I'm making micro agreements with them. I propose the next steps to take and I wait to see if they accept that challenge. And if they don't accept the challenge, well, then it's a feedback that I can use in order to understand whether or not I need to improve my demonstration of the example or the motivation for the challenge, or maybe just simply they are not ready to take on the challenge because they all have already hit their frustration point, right? So it's incredibly valuable feedback to know why we're not making the certain progress at the tempo that I thought is suitable for us. Now, it might sound tedious on the surface to do all these micro agreements, but the overall progress is a lot faster using this approach. You see, for a person to have this sense of growth or being able to get into the flow zone, they need to feel like they have a choice to opt into the challenge and get a chance to buy into the challenge. And if we don't take this chunked approach, we don't know where we lost them. And then we continue piling on with a lot of challenges and find different people in the organization in spending most of their time in the frustration zone, and then they check out. And the damage this does to the organization as a whole sets you back a lot more than if you just manage to check in with the people on a regular basis. And this checking gives you incredibly valuable feedback as a CEO, the leader, or the organization as a whole that you don't want to miss out on. I learned this back in 2014 when I almost ran SwingStep into the ground because I didn't really understand and appreciate the importance of financial dashboards. I made a separate video about financial dashboards. I put a link in the descriptions for that as well. And when we hit this situation, I felt we need to set a few revenue target goals in order to dig ourselves out of it. And I was honestly perplexed when my team was giving me pushback for trying to push for these goals when it was obvious that otherwise we wouldn't survive. But fortunately, I took a step back and I listened to what they had to say and decided, okay, let's make this the final experiment of SwingStep potentially. And I just focused on helping each person finding their flow zone again. And rather than trying to push for those financial objectives that I was aiming for. And somehow, by taking this step, we actually managed to dig ourselves out of the situation better than I could even imagine. And that set a whole nother type of culture for the company moving forward. And today, both SwingStep and MergeLabs are working on this micro agreement principle. I might present the next steps And this will be treated as one input. We discuss this, we discuss all the other things that are happening at the same time, and then we make a new decision based on all the available information that we have and what people are able to take on and move forward from that perspective. Of course, when tasks are not taken on, it gives me the opportunity to understand what's really going on in the organization. So it's valuable feedback that I don't want to get rid of. Now, granted, I scaled SwingStep down 2 years ago to focus on MergeLabs, and MergeLabs is still a young startup with its first coordination management solution on the market. And it will be interesting to see how these principles will work at scale. If you want to discuss this, I'm happy to geek out over a digital coffee. But the way I will move forward is that I will do my best to create an environment through policies, trainings, and inspiration that continuously improve my team's ability to take on greater and greater challenge so that they can expand their comfort zone through the process of converting negative emotional energy to positive emotional energy and make space for that process of self-actualization. And if this is not happening, it's incredible valuable feedback for me to understand where I need to improve within the organization. Earlier, I promised to also give you a little bit about my personal backstory. I started off as a chemical engineer in Sweden. I worked as an organic chemist in France, and then I spent 4 years working as an Alzheimer's researcher in Germany. And the contrast between engineering from Sweden and organic chemistry and brain drug development couldn't have been bigger in terms of like engineering is all about specificity and organic chemistry and brain drug development is just full of abstractions. It's just so complex that you can have no sense of certainty about anything. So it's all hypothesis driven. And it's during this period where I believe I started to get better at tolerating abstraction and finding something tangible within abstraction. However, the 2008 financial crisis also made its way over to Europe in 2010, where all the jobs I was looking for as a chemist just evaporated. So I decided to try my luck as a swing dance professional, teaching, organizing events, and building a business around this art form. But also here, my passion for finding something concrete in abstraction helped accelerate my career to some of the highest opportunities in this community, where I got the opportunity to teach all around the world. And if you put my name and Lindy Hop into YouTube, you find many of these presentations there. But also, I managed to build one of the largest businesses in this community. Now, it's a tiny industry where SwingStep with its 20 employees could be considered as one of the largest ones there. From the 2 decades that I've been exposed to Lindy Hop and African American art forms, I got the opportunity to also learn different sets of value propositions that helped me think about growth and progress differently than what I've previously known. And I think that has influenced a lot on how I approach everything I'm talking about in this video. When it comes to the process of self-actualization, I can now look at it from two different perspectives at the same time. With one foot in my Eurocentric upbringing, where I appreciate and value clarity, order, structure, and one foot in the Africa-centric values, where we deliberately want to hold on to abstraction and not remove abstraction so that within that process have a better chance to create something unique and make space for self-expressions. And being able to navigate this paradox, because these are opposite values, I think I have made insights that has helped me a lot more with growth, or helped me navigate this paradox a little bit better, to better find a good process of self-actualization where you both get clarity in aspects, but also make space for the unique you to come out of it. I believe as a startup founder, I'm benefiting tremendously from having experienced both these value propositions and used them as a way to find my way forward. There's so much information coming from LinkedIn, different podcasts, different books that everybody is pulling you in a certain direction. And if you just follow all the advice, you inevitably just create the same thing as everybody else. So you want to hold on to some abstraction and not trying to be so tempted in following best practices, because the goal is to find a unique category, build a unique solution that others haven't been able to do in order to solve an important problem. And being able to understand what is information to process and what to tune out has been a important skill I feel like I'm working with right now as we are finding our way as a startup. Now, I hope this resonated with you. I would love to hear what your perspective is. Please let me know in the comments or reach out. We can have a digital coffee. And yeah, thank you for watching. Have a good one.